Okay. How long have you been the director? Yeah, I gave a whole bunch of recommendations. You did. And we made I gave him two people. We are? Yeah. Oh, okay. It's pretty good. Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Taking turns at the microphone. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to this important information session. We're hoping that everybody here gets a lot out of it. And we have, as you know, as a township, as a town in New Jersey, it's very difficult for seniors especially to stay in their homes because our property taxes are ridiculous. And we're trying to do the best we can to come up with innovative solutions. Committee member Daffis and Committee Member DeLuca have been working on this. So I'm going to turn over the program to Mr. DeLuca so we can get right into it and you don't need to hear me talk. So there you go.
Thank you, Mayor. That's what we like, short and sweet. And thank you all for coming out. And we have about half a dozen or so on Zoom. Yep. So we have a great crowd. I was going to text you today, Missy, to see if what the over-under is. This I would have lost because I would have had under. I'm really glad to see everyone here. We know this is a very new concept. So I think we wanted to raise this information, raise the idea and see how it goes. We'll walk baby steps in this, but we think it's a really good program. You're going to hear a lot about it. And I want to give credit to two people who, I was going to say grabbed me, but they just shook me and said, hey, you got to pay attention to this. And one is Amy Stewart, our coordinator of the Maplewood side of the SOMA Two Towns for All Ages. And Amy, say hello. And then the other person is Joan Crystal, who I believe is on Zoom. Thank you, Joan, out there. Joan's a member of our advisory committee, our senior advisory committee. And they came and I don't remember where it was at a park or an event or something. And they said, we want to talk to you about this home sharing thing. And I said, okay, let's talk. And we met and talked. And then our director of community services, Melissa Mancuso, is also here. Thank you. So in any event, we got together, talked about it. We discussed it with our Affordable Housing Board and saw this as a way to do a number of things. One is to get affordable housing, more affordable housing in town. And for those who are home seekers, this is an opportunity to get a place to stay that's affordable and where you can help out. And those who are home providers, you're actually getting somebody to stay with you. You get some companionship, you get some help around the house and some income. So this is a win all around. You're going to hear about it. And so what we're going to do tonight is I'm going to introduce our speaker who has a presentation. And again, it is a lot of words. So if you want to move up, if you're finding during the presentation that you can't see, we can take a break and you can move up a little bit, or you can move now. People on Zoom should have no problem at all. And then after the presentation, we'll take questions. And the questions, Steve can handle some, we'll handle some from the town side, and then we'll go from there. So without further ado, I want to introduce Stephen Nagel, who is the Executive Director of HomeSharing. They are in Bridgewater, New Jersey, and Stephen has been the director for a couple of years, but the organization has been around for a very long time. And this program has been around for a while. So he'll explain all that. So sit back and let's get the presentation going. So Steve Nagel.
Good evening, everybody. Madam Mayor, members of the town committee. It is an honor and pleasure to be here today with you. I would be remiss if I didn't first thank Amy Stewart for giving me a phone call one day about a year ago and saying, hey, I'm in Maplewood. Can you come over and talk to me about whatever it is you do? So we went from that meeting to being here today, and I thank you all for being here. I have a PowerPoint presentation for you. I know how exciting that is. I understand I have about 3 hours for this presentation in this. However, the mayor has corrected me, and I should be. I will make every effort to get you home before the summer solstice closes tonight. How's that? Or earlier. So whenever the Zoom operator is ready, I don't know who's got that, Patrick. All right. Home sharing, I've been there, like Tom said, I've been there for 2 years. Home sharing's been around for 40. Started in someone's living room, as many nonprofit organizations do, and a bunch of people got together and said, there has to be a better way to provide affordable housing to the residents in New Jersey to, besides just building buildings and saying, okay, we're going to put some people in there and call it affordable. Our mission is to create affordable housing solutions by matching those seeking housing with those who need additional income or services to maintain their homes while fostering independence and dignity. We're currently in 11 counties in New Jersey. We're doing this huge expansion, and I'll talk about it a little bit later in Monmouth and Ocean counties, but we've been serving Essex County for since 2001, and I'll talk about that in a second too. We are a permanent housing solution for those who have a home and need additional income, companionship, or help to remain in their home, or those looking for affordable housing and are willing to live in someone else's home. And the most important thing is all of our services are provided at absolutely no cost to our clients. When you go through our service, it won't cost anyone a cent to use us. Our basic program parameters is that the person who is sharing a room, we call them seekers, and you'll hear me refer to that term from time to time, gets a private room in the home, either a private bathroom or a shared bathroom, and use of the common areas of the home. It's not a landlord-tenant or a homeowner-boarder situation. It is honestly two people living together, sharing a home. The basic criteria is, most important thing is that the seeker has to have income. This is not a free housing program. Our average homeowner asks between about $700. Our median is between $750 and $850 a month. And this usually includes utilities. It's also, to a conversation I was having earlier with Tom, is one of the things is like, how much does the homeowner charge? Well, it depends. In Middlesex County, there's a town called Metuchen. A studio apartment in Metuchen goes for $3,000 a month. So an affordable rate in Metuchen for a home share is about $1,100 a month, which sounds expensive, but in that area, that is actually low. So it kind of depends on what the values are in the local community, but it also is a relationship between the homeowner and the seeker, and that homeowner is called a provider. The provider has to have their own income also. They can't depend on home sharing to make sure they can keep their home. This supplements their income and helps them maintain their home. In exchange for reductions in those service expense, in those monthly home sharing charges, you can get the charges reduced by providing services in the home. For example, cleaning the house, doing yard work, mowing the grass, taking out the garbage, shoveling snow, walking the dog, are all different ways that people can make an arrangement to reduce the cost of the home share expense. It's a great program for the elderly in that there's someone there who can call in case of emergency. We have a home share going on right now. It's a father of 3 kids. The mother unfortunately passed away. The wife passed away. The 3 kids were worried about the father living alone. He's getting older. They were worried about his health. They entered the father entered a home sharing agreement with us. and they reduced the seeker's expenses by $50 a month. Every morning, he had to go down and say good morning to the father. And the father was told, you have to say good morning back. $50 a month, they got a daily wellness check on their father. And the seeker was told if the father doesn't say hello back, to call one of the kids and they will find out what's going on. It's a great way in that case to make sure there's someone there to make a phone call and reach out to emergency services in case of emergency. They can prepare or set up meals. They can go grocery shopping either for them or together. They can provide rides to doctor's appointments and other medical needs. Most important thing is companionship. We do a survey of our clients annually, and 80% of our providers and 78% of our seekers said the number one benefit they received from being in part of the home sharing program was an increased feeling of companionship and a decreased feeling of loneliness, which is a very important statistic because it was a study recently done in the medical community, and they found that the feeling of profound loneliness in seniors has a physical effect, the same physical effect as smoking 15 cigarettes a day does. So to increase people's health, an increased feeling of companionship and a decreased feeling of loneliness helps provide for a higher quality of life. There are things we don't do. We don't expect our seekers or providers to provide any sort of hands-on services. As I like to say, there are people that are professionals that do that. So examples of that, we don't do dressing of people. We don't ask our clients to help with bathing or toileting or anything like that. There's a whole profession dedicated to that. We're not that profession. What is our process? Our process for 40 years has been you start by calling our office at 908-526-4663. I'm embarrassed I had a look. I just forgot for a second. You call our office, and our office manager serves as what we call our front door. She'll explain the program to the person calling. In turn, she'll then see whether or not it's a fit, because this program takes time to get into. We get calls regularly on a Monday that's from people saying, I'm going to be homeless on Friday. I don't know what to do. We are not the answer to that question. We will instead refer people out to agencies that can work with people that are precariously housed in an immediate loss of losing their home, because we're not that kind of agency, and you'll understand why in a couple of minutes. So we have been, and we'll talk about what are their interests, what are they looking for in a home sharing experience. And we've been doing it the same way for 40 years. I've been there for 2, so of course I'm going to mess it all up, and we're going to online applications in the next couple of months to make it easier on the clients to get through our processes more quickly. At that point, we will send an application out either emailed or mailed to the prospective client. It includes 3 professional references. We require references and background checks from both our providers and seekers. The references have to be professional references. They can't be family members. They can be landlords, past landlords, employers, current employers, past employers, people they've worked with, people they know in the community. That's fine with us. They just can't be family members. So they'll get the references, they'll get their applications completed, they'll send that back to us. If there are any professional references, if they're under any sort of medical care, we need to talk to the medical provider. And we're not talking to them about any of the HIPAA stuff, as I call it, but we want to make sure that this person would be successful in what we would call a roommate situation, living with someone sharing a home. If a person has violent tendencies and they tend to when they get angry, they tend to punch the wall, that's not someone we exactly want living in someone's home. They also have to provide verification of income, either 2 recent pay stubs, a Social Security award letter, a pension letter. Not that it would ever happen in New Jersey, but if they're working under the table, a letter from their employer saying, yes, they do in fact have an income and they get paid every month, and this is what they get paid. So they send all that information back to us. We then do reference checks. We'll call the references. We'll ask them questions like, if you had a room in your home and you were looking to get someone to live with you, would you want this person living with you? Which is a very telling question with a very telling answer. We also do criminal background checks. We use a program called Checker, which is one of the largest background check companies in the nation, to make sure there is nothing in the criminal background, because we've, in the past, but before I got there, they used Google, and we found one person and we had to go through 14 Google pages before we found out they had a weapons charge in Kentucky in 1990. So, right, Checker will catch all that stuff right away, and has. We then, after they clear, they get through that portion of this process. And again, this is why we're not immediate. It takes time, because we want to be thorough in making sure that we have all the information we need to make sure people that are going to be safe and stay in these relationships. We then have MSWs on staff. I'm sorry, I used an abbreviation, Masters of Social Work. We have licensed Masters of Social Work who will then interview both the potential seeker and the potential provider. And the last question is like, how do you feel about pets? If the other person had a pet, would that be a deal breaker? Would that be something that would prevent you from participating in this program? What about handguns? If they had a weapon in the home, how would you feel about that? If they were going to bring a weapon in the home, how would you feel about that? What about smokers? If someone smokes, are they allowed to smoke outside if they can't smoke in the house? These are all questions we're going to get answers to, because invariably at some point they will come up in this process. Well, then if they get through the interviews and we think we have someone on the provider's side, we will then reach out to the provider and say, hey, we think we have someone that would be a good person for you to meet. This process has taken between 2 and 3 weeks, and they haven't even met each other yet. They don't even know each other exists. So we will bring them together to meet each other for the first time in the provider's home. We've also, at that point, gone and done a walk through the provider's home and made sure things like the plumbing is working and the hot water is hot and the cold water is cold, to make sure it's an appropriate place for someone to live. It's not like a professional housing inspection. I don't want to have anybody get that confused, but it's to make sure that it's an appropriate place for someone to live. So once we do that, we go to the next slide. They meet, and if they say, yeah, this is going to work, we call it a match. And a match is made. And that, at that point, the two people fill out something called the shared living arrangement. That is where all the stuff comes out. What are they going to, what's the seeker going to get? The seeker is going to get their own private bedroom. They're going to get either a private bathroom or use of the bathroom that's there. They're going to get 2 cabinets in the kitchen, 3 shelves in the refrigerator, 2 shelves in the freezer. They're going to go share groceries and split the cost. They're not going to share groceries and get their own. There's an opportunity for them to eat together. That can all be put into the shared living arrangement. And the other thing is the financial part of it. There may or may not be a financial agreement. If there's a financial agreement in this where the home sharing expense comes into play, we do not take part in that. That is something that the provider and the seeker work out together, and they come up with the number. Once they come up with the number, and we have a pretty good idea by the time they get there, because we're not going to match someone that has $400 a month on Social Security with someone in Metuchen looking for $1,100. That's not going to work. It's a waste of their time, and it's certainly a waste of the providers and the seekers in our time. So we don't want to do that. So we're going to let them hash that out. That goes in the shared living arrangement. We get none of that. Again, remember, there is no cost to our clients, so we get none of that funding. A move-in date is set. Usually the rooms are furnished. If they're not furnished, we can help with the furnishing. We have resources that are in our network that can help with bedroom furniture and the like, and sometimes dishes and cooking stuff if they need that. That is not where our relationship ends with the clients, though. We participate in something we call match maintenance. We're going to call, see how it's going. We're going to call 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, and every year after that to see how it's going, because we want to keep people together. And invariably what we find is that our problems pop up in the first 1 to 3 months. And I'll give you a perfect example. I'm home sharing with Amy, and I'm only picking on Amy because she's sitting in front of me. I'm HomeShare with Amy, and when I interviewed with Amy, I said, I'm meticulous. I make my bed every day. I can't stand having dirty dishes. I clean up after myself right away. And our masters of social work will call Amy after a month and say, how's it going? And she'll say, Steve is a slob. I can either confirm or deny that personally, by the way. Steve is a slob. He never makes his bed. He leaves his door open. Everybody can see his clothes laying all around. You know, the dishes are in the sink all the time. I can't take this. It's driving me crazy. Social worker will call me and basically say, Steve, what the heck are you doing? Do your dishes, make your bed, do you said you were going to do in the agreement. And usually that will take care of the problem if we address it and as I like to say, nip it in the bud rather quickly. It is an ongoing living situation. If there are people need to get out of this arrangement, usually it's because either the seeker has found employment out of the area or a family member wants them to move in with them. But generally, it's an ongoing situation. Our median match time is about 5 years. Our longest match is 24 years. And I'll talk more about that in a second. It's on the next slide. I just gave you a preview. But if there needs to be an out, there's a 30-day out. So they just need to give 30 days notice that they're going to terminate this agreement. And at the end of that month, the seeker has to move out, and we will work as quickly as we can to get another seeker into that provider's home because the provider is expecting that income on a monthly basis. So our accomplishments, we've made over 2,000 matches since we started the program 40 years ago. Our longest match is currently 24 years. I talked about that as two ladies live together in Hillsborough. If you ever hop on our website, which is in the brochure that you received, but if you haven't, I'll make sure you get a brochure. The video is on the homepage. This little company called CNN interviewed them. I wish I could take credit for that. Was before me. And it talks all about how their living relationship has worked. They're getting older. The provider has no family left. And so she has willed her home to the seeker because she said, when I pass away, it's not fair that you're going to become homeless. You get my house. So that's 24 years. Our longest tenured provider is 28 years. She is on her 7th match. So immediately the question pops in your head is what happened to the other 6? The other 6 are their own permanent housing because they were able to save for a down payment on their home or a townhouse using the home sharing program. The 7th family with her right now is a single mother with 2 children. The daughter just graduated high school this week. Their son is a sophomore in college. The daughter will be going to college. And I met the family and the mother told me that the only way she could afford to send her kids to college is by doing home sharing. And when the kids complete college, then she's going to start saving the money she would use for tuition to save for a down payment on her own home. So it's a program that has a lot of tangible outcomes besides just housing. We average between 1 and 5 matches per month. I talked earlier about the program in Monmouth and Ocean counties. We receive funding to hire a second social worker. So we have someone just working in Monmouth and Ocean counties. He started on May 13th. He has 12 prospects. He had 12 prospects by June 1st. So there's a lot of demand in a lot of areas when people start to hear about us and learn about us. And that's proof because you're all here tonight. And thank you again for being here. At any point, we'll be monitoring and managing 50 or so matches at any time. So we have one social worker, like we said, who works most of the state. So she's very busy. I am not that social worker. You don't want me messing with this stuff. So this is our contact information. It's also in the brochure. I will be happy to yield back the other hour and a half I pretty much have and answer any questions you may have about anything having to do with our program or anything you've heard that you want to know more about. We're very fortunate that we have a number of your municipal leaders here. So if I don't know the answer and it's a non-question and relates more to the municipality, certainly there are people here that can answer or get the answers. So.
All right, Steve. So just so we're all clear, when you ask your question, I'm going to repeat it so that the people on Zoom can hear. Okay? So we have a question here. Okay, so the question is the expectations on if you're a seeker and you enter into a financial agreement with the provider, what are the responsibilities? Because in a landlord-tenant situation, it's very legally prescribed situation. This is a little different, I would guess you're going to say. So how does that work? What are the protections in those financial arrangements?
Sure, I'm happy you're repeating these because I couldn't hear it.
Okay.
The financial relationship is between the seeker and the provider. The contract is not a lease. It is a contract enforceable in court. I can tell you that in 40 years, we've only had to go to court once with it, and we won. I should say that the provider won. We supported the provider. The shared living arrangement spells out the financial responsibilities. I'll say it this way, if there are any, because not everybody wants financial, they want more services and companionship for seniors. If there are financial responsibilities, it's spelled out in the agreement, including the payment date and when it's delinquent by. And if they're late, call us because we will get in touch with the seeker. And if it becomes a situation where they don't pay after a while, we will begin the proceedings to support the provider. We have a attorney on our board who works to support these kinds of issues. So we would get the counsel for it, and we would go to civil court with it because it's a civil contract. Answer your question?
So the question is, any instances where someone does a lease and the financial agreement?
We don't do leases. Home sharing does it. And I'll give you an interesting example that totally different, but may help support your point. It's up to the leases between the homeowner and the tenant. We don't have tenants. We have seekers and providers. We talked earlier about how we don't do any of the hands-on stuff. We have providers who have brought in seekers who are home health aides, who do separate contracts with the home health aides to provide those kinds of services outside of our agreement. So what they do outside of our shared living arrangement is between the two parties or the two people.
So let me just be clear about one other thing. Is this only for someone who owns a home as opposed to someone who's a tenant? Suppose you're renting a home. You have a landlord, you're renting the home. Can you bring in a seeker?
And that's an interesting question with an interesting answer, because I actually, when I started here, I didn't know any better. I went and researched that. The challenge becomes, and it becomes a landlord-tenant issue at that point. So when I started, I went and I met with the property manager of a facility called the Hallmark House. I don't know if you're familiar with Hallmark House. If you ever go to City Hall in Newark, there's this huge apartment building diagonally across the street, 1,100 units. That's Hallmark House. So I went to her and I said, how would our program work in a apartment situation? And the answer is the seeker would have no financial responsibility on the lease, but they would have to go on the lease as a non-revenue tenant. So in other words, you would have the landlord who provides the lease. You would have the tenant who receives the lease and is responsible for the fiscal responsibility, paying the monthly rent. And there would be a third party on the lease who would be the seeker, our client. And that is because if you go, especially in apartment buildings where they've got key fobs and key codes and stuff, the only way they can get those codes is to be on a lease.
Okay, other questions? Yes. So the question is, what happens if the relationship goes south and the seeker does not want to leave? And you then have to go to litigation or anything like that. So what experience do you have?
Well, remember, 40 years, it's happened once. And the court sided with the provider and the person had to leave. And that was, and the civil courts, when it comes to things like this, work really quickly. We honestly don't have that situation. I'm not saying it could never happen. We usually don't have that situation because all this is explained in that interview process and in the shared living arrangement meeting, when the two parties get together. So there's an understanding from the start that there's a 30-day out, and after 30 days, either side can terminate the agreement, and the seeker has to move out. You know, a lot of times it's like, well, I'm not going to renew my lease and you can't make me leave. You know, it's a different relationship because we have our masters of social work involved in it.
Is a seeker, let's say a seeker, it doesn't work out with that provider and the seeker does leave. Does your agency work with that seeker to find another provider?
We make every effort to do that, and we make every effort to get the provider another seeker as quickly as possible.
Yes. So the question is, what's the impact of these relationships on filing your income tax? Do you have to provide, do you have to list yourself as a landlord? Do you have to file that as an income? What's your relationship to the insurance carriers? Is there any special requirement that certain categories of insurance have to be held by the provider? Does the seeker have to provide any insurance?
Next question. Okay. This is not a lease. So it is a home share, and everything I've been told, and again, you should consult your own professionals. This is not income. You have to pay taxes on income. This is not income. This is sharing expenses. So it's reducing the expenses of the home for the part of the home they're using because you're not charging rent. You don't have a lease. You have a shared living agreement. And this is, remember, we've got 40 years doing this. Regarding insurance, your homeowner's insurance, because you're sharing the house, you're not renting, should cover the person living there. We can certainly ask them to pick up, I will call it a renter's policy. It's not, you know, there are home sharing policies out there through insurance companies. But generally, the seeker is protected through the provider's insurance policy.
You had a question?
I am not a lawyer, and nor do I play one on TV. So, you know, if that's a concern of yours, please check with your professionals. But from everything I have been told, and then from our clients, is that this is not income, and the IRS does not view it as income, especially in the senior population, when so much is trying to be done to help seniors age in place.
So the question is, what does the case management look like? What is the rotation? How often does it happen? You mentioned before, you know, every year, but how intense is it in the beginning? And at what point is there an intervention, if any?
1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, and every year after that. Yeah. If there's a problem, we'll do every day. If needed, we'll do twice a day. We've had a couple where they've worked out, but they needed to be talked to a couple of times a day, and the provider needed to be talked to, and then the seeker needed to be talked to, and we needed to find common ground because it was a simple misunderstanding. You know, he ate my casserole. You know, and he's not supposed to eat my food, and he ate my food, and that just started this whole thing, and we had to work that out. But it worked out in the end. She got a new casserole. She was happy. Yeah.
Make sure you have somebody who's not colorblind, so you can have your stuff in one color and their stuff in another.
I'm gonna steal that, by the way. I like
you
that.
can have
Thank
it.
you.
Let's take a moment and visit with the folks on Zoom so that they feel connected.
For those joining us on Zoom, if you have a question, please raise your hand now and we'll move you over to panelists so that you can ask your question. And I see that Joan Crystal has her hand raised. I will promote Miss Crystal to panelist now. Hello, Miss Crystal, welcome. You can ask your question.
Thank you. Yes, I do have a question. What happens if either the seeker or the provider has an illness requiring hospitalization or nursing home or rehab for a significant period of time?
So the question is, what happens if either the seeker or the provider has an illness that requires hospitalization and or extended care and cannot be in the house?
I was going to ask if you were going to repeat the question for 7 minutes. They are responsible for the monthly payment. It's part of the shared living arrangement, but we are human at the end, and human beings and compassionate people. At the end, if the provider wishes to give them some leniency in paying that responsibility, then that's certainly between the provider and the seeker. If there's going to be a long-term situation if they're going to be institutionalized for years, we may look at the 30-day out in the agreement and moving them into there and then getting them back into our processes when they're ready to be released.
What about a provider? So let's say I'm the seeker, I'm living there, and my provider has an illness that requires the provider to go long-term hospitalization. Do I stay in the house alone?
You can. It's up to the provider, and certainly in that case, it becomes a provider's family also. We've had that happen. We also unfortunately have providers that pass away, and one of the nice things about our provider families is they understand the seeker's needs, and they have allowed the seekers to stay in the home while they've gone through all the processes of closing out the provider's affairs. And then we look at, and while that's happening, we look at moving them into another home share. So it's really, it's one of those, if you remember the old commercial, your mileage may vary. It's one of those, it's really a case-by-case situation, but we work with the provider families to try to keep the seeker there as long as we can because they're paying money into the estate. And rather than the house sitting vacant, they've had people that are living there for years and might as well keep getting the money until they're ready to move the house.
Anybody else?
If anybody else on Zoom has a question, please raise your hand now. Now moving over Audrey Rowe to panelist. All right. Welcome, Ms. Rowe. You may unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nagel, thank you for your presentation. I am the program director for the South Orange Maplewood Community Coalition on Race, and we are very interested and have been working with the township on affordable housing. I'm particularly interested in the composition of your participants. I was wondering, do you have any information about the percentage of seniors versus non-seniors participating in your program, and also the percentage of people of color in your seeker and your provider populations?
So the question was for the demographics of the program now. How many are seniors and how do you define a senior? And so how many are seniors and how many are not? And also for both seekers and providers, how many are people of color in the seekers and how many are people of color in providers?
Perfect.
Good question.
Thank you, Audrey.
And this is one of those, if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up because nobody will know the difference anyway. I can tell you that 55% of our our providers are age 60 and up, and let me make sure, did I say 65? Because I get the numbers confused in my head. 65% of our providers are over the age of 60, and 60% of our seekers are between 50 and 60. Our oldest provider is 91. Our youngest seeker is 18. He's a freshman at Raritan Valley Community College which serves Hunterdon and Somerset counties, and came in. He's an exchange student, needed housing, and they came through the home sharing program from the college, and he's living with a senior and helping provide services there while he goes to class. We have a lot of younger seekers with older providers in college towns. So we have a lot of graduate students, so 23, 24-year-olds living in home sharing arrangements in New Brunswick with Rutgers University, because graduate students tend to come from out of state at Rutgers. Rutgers likes taking them because you get the out of state rate. So they'll accept more out of state people than they will in-state people. And when those people graduate, they don't want to leave, but they can't afford the high cost of housing in the central New Jersey area. So they do home sharing with us for a couple of years until they figure out what they want to do. Demographically, and certainly I can provide these. I actually have these numbers back at the office on paper. Demographically, I believe that if you let me lump them into two categories, 60% of our clients are Caucasian and 40% is everything else. I believe that 40%, 28% is African-American, and then everything else is comprised of the remaining percentage. Please don't ask me to do math. Thank you. 12% is everything else. Well, you were right there.
Uh-oh. A double hit. We still got Zoom, and then we'll come back. We're going to split up the CCR questions.
So we have Natalie Picow with a question. I am moving her over to panelists now. Ms. Picow, welcome to the program. You may unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yes, hi. It's actually Pico, but that's
Oh,
okay. It's spelled
thank you.
Pico. So I do have a question. So for the seekers, is it always one single person, or is there ever a case where it's say a mother and a child?
So the question is for the seekers. Is it always one person seeking, or is it ever a mother and a child? And I think you referenced that before. Or can it be a couple?
Yes. Next question.
Why don't you go
It
into
can
a little bit more?
Yes, it
Okay.
can be. We have couples that are in home sharing agreements. We have families. It's harder with families because generally what happens is you have a mother or a mother and father and a child or children, and they require separate bedrooms. So it requires more bedrooms, which increases the home sharing cost. So we don't have a lot of families. I talked about the one seeker we had with the mother and the two kids that are, college and just graduating high school. Most of our seekers tend to be singles or couples, not necessarily husband, wife, but people that are in a relationship. You also, to a question I was asked earlier before the meeting, if you have open bedrooms, you can have more than one seeker in your home. However, if you've got a 5-bedroom home and you're living alone, we are probably not going to put 4 people in that house, because we are very concerned as an organization about the quality of your neighborhood. And if you put 4 people in your house, you've got 4 times the trash, you have 4 times the cars and the parking needs. And I know, I've been told you can't park on streets at night, so that becomes a whole issue. So we try really hard to maintain the quality of the neighborhood and the relationship that the provider has with their neighbors, because that's important also. So when we do the home inspections and we look at all that, that all comes into account. So the answer to the summary question is we can have singles, couples, and families depending on what the provider is willing to provide to the seeker and what they can work out together.
Great. We're going to go back here in the room. Nancy? So the question is there ever an arrangement in which the provider puts a limit on the time a seeker will be there because either they know they're going to be leaving the state or selling the house in so many years, so they put a cap on that? And the other part of the question was, are there situations in which the provider is away a lot? They might be visiting families, or maybe they vacation in warmer part of the country.
The answer to both questions is yes. If, when we do when the provider calls the office and says, I want to become a provider to home sharing, or I have a room that I want to share, in that conversation comes up, I'm only going to be living in the home for 3 years. So we will tailor our search for seekers for people that are looking for housing for 1 to 3 years. Because it's not fair to either. Again, it's the old business model. It's easier to keep a customer than get a new one. And we want to keep our clients for 24 years, like that relationship is. And so if that's stated up front, you'll find a lot of people that are on 3-year contracts for work, or know that they're going to be retiring in 3 years and will be moving out of state, or be looking to move down to a retirement community. And certainly they will be able to find someone to fit that parameter. And
Dean?
how do you make sure that
So the question is how, going back to the question on the demographics, how do you include diversity and inclusion in your matching?
Well, the flippant answer is we don't care. We don't care what someone is. We care who a person is, and what their nationality, creed, it doesn't matter. We want to keep people housed and make sure the seniors can age in place. We have a strict non-discrimination policy, both at the board level and our staff level and in our client contracts. And it's interesting, Committeeman, that you brought that up, because it's never been asked to me before. And I've never really had to think of the answer to it, other than we have never had, for us, it's never been an issue. Because to us, people are people, we couldn't care less. If we can keep them housed and we can keep people in their home and get people affordably housed, that's all we care about. I don't know if that's a great answer, but it's a truthful answer. And we don't restrict, I've done these presentations all over the state. I've done them in Newark. I've done them in Livingston. I've done them in Caldwell. I've done them I'm going down to Trenton to do one. So it's, we're trying to make sure everybody knows about us, because if someone needs our services, we want to provide them.
Okay, another question. So the question is, the comment was that Maplewood has a significant LGBTQ plus population. Have you done matches from that community?
I'm going to give you the answer I know you don't want. I don't know. I haven't asked, because again, to me, as long as you're housed, that's all I care about. But before we leave, if I can give you my card and give you my card, I will get you the better demographics number that I have at the office, and I will ask our social worker and find out and see if she knows. Because I don't believe we asked that question anywhere in our application. But I'm sure in the interview process that comes out. But I'll be happy to get you that answer if we have.
Collection of data that pertains to that kind of household. It requires it in race, ethnicity, and all other identities or categories, but it does not require
Yeah. And basically, if you think of the census, the questions they ask in the census, that's the data we collect.
Any other questions here?
There's one here from this.
Oh, yes, I didn't see.
The social worker does that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so
Good question. I broke the rule. I'm so sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. It's a good answer. So the question is, you have a list of seekers and a list of providers. Does the provider or the seeker see the complete list of the other party, or does the social worker provide the list of a certain number of people to either the provider or the seeker of the providers?
Well, my answer would be the social worker.
Very good.
They say all of our information is confidential. To the point of where if you ever came to our office, all of the client files are kept locked in file cabinets. And if there's a client record out, it drives me batty because we have people come in the office for meetings and they meet with me that they're not involved in the programmatic side. We actually have if you come in to visit me, and you're certainly more than welcome to come to beautiful Bridgewater, first thing you'll do when you walk in is you'll sign a confidentiality agreement because we protect people's information. All of the client files are locked up and time to time, someone, because we have a data person who inputs this stuff into a database. If there's a record sitting out, I go ballistic because that's not fair to the person. They're put at risk. Even if there's nothing on there, I don't care. We protect that information. The matches are all done through the social worker because remember, she does the interview. So she's talked to the seeker prior to them even knowing the provider exists. They've also talked to the provider before they knew the seeker exists. So she has the feel, and she's a very good feel. She's very good at this, of knowing these two people that would work well together.
Okay, let's see if anybody else on Zoom.
Does
It's almost
anyone else
an hour.
joining
We'd
us
like
on
to-
Zoom have a question? If you do, please raise your hand now. All right. No. No
Okay,
hands.
any last questions here? Yes. So the statement is that in some of the selection, it might be geography, it might be where you're going to school, it might be where you're working. It might be a lot of things, right?
Sure. A lot of variables. One of the questions we ask the seekers is it important? Do you have a car or do you need to live near public transportation? And we have some that are retired that just can't afford the cost of living anymore or looking to move in with somebody else. The 24-year match was because we had a person who wanted to be a provider. We had a woman who got divorced and couldn't afford to live on her own anymore, needed to live near a main road and needed a place to live.
Okay, any other questions here? So one of the benefits of showing up is we have cookies and water. So after you can stick around and talk to Steve one-on-one. But let's just go over again. If somebody was interested in finding out more, what would be the next step?
Call our office. You
Okay,
can either call our office. The phone number is on the brochure. We have brochures up here and magnets. I brought magnets tonight. Or you can email us at info@homesharing.org. And that goes again to our office manager. We call her the front door. She can get you the information. The worst person in the world to call once you get into the system is me. Because I am not the person that does the client stuff. I'm the person that does the audits and the financial reports and all that stuff, which is scary because I can't do math. But the front door is the best way. Her name is Antoinette. If you call the office and you get Antoinette, say, "Hi, Antoinette," she'll freak her out, which is cool. I like having people do that. Keeps her on her toes. And she can give, as I said, she'll go through the program introduction and get you the information you need. If you need to get me, you can certainly, my email address is director@homesharing.org. I try to made it easy for people to reach me. And I check that all the time. So feel free to email anytime you want. You may get an answer at 11:30 or 12 o'clock at night. But we want to be accessible to the community. So if you need us, we want to get back to you as quick as we can.
okay, anything else? I just want to recognize Deputy Mayor Jermaine Kripe came in and has been here for the presentation. And so we have 4 members of the Township Committee. Committeewoman Engel is very interested in this, but could not be here this evening. So we made sure this is being recorded so that if you know of anybody who might be interested in this, we will have this recording on our website. So people will be able to check it out on the township website and see what we've talked about for the last hour. Again, go
Let me
ahead.
take a point of personal privilege, if I may, and first thank your mayor and committee people for coming tonight. It's the summer solstice. It's a day with the longest amount of sunlight in it, and you certainly can be doing lots of other things on this day in here, listening to me. But thank you all for expressing your interest in our program. The only way we're going to help serve people is if people know about us. So thank you very much, and thank you for moderating.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Thank you very much. So please get some cookies, and if you have questions of Steve that you would like to ask personally, he is here. We'll move the microphone so